This is the new Alpine A110 R, the new crowning jewel in a sports car range that has won adoring praise since first appearing in 2017, but which has yet to win very many sales. However, as it ages, so this car's popularity slowly rises, and this new range-topping version should do plenty to boost its profile. The R follows the usual template for extra special track-intended sports cars. It costs half as much again as an A110 S, £89,990 in the UK, which isn't quite Porsche GT car money, and it's not a lot more than the new Lotus Emira, but it's plenty for any four-cylinder sports car, of course. That price gets you a lighter, more aerodynamic A110 with more downforce, potentially quite a lot more grip, and more adjustability in its suspension. But it doesn't buy you a more powerful car. The R has the same 1.8-litre turbocharged 4-pot as an A110 S, with 295 horsepower and 251 pounds-foot of torque, and the same gearing for its 7-speed twin-clutch gearbox. The car is 34 kilograms lighter than an S, and the biggest contributors to that weight saving are these carbon fibre wheels, which are more than 3 kilos lighter per corner than an S's alloys. Behind them you get the same Brembo brakes as an S, but with much better cooling. Meanwhile, the car sits on new adjustable coilover suspension. It rides 10mm lower than an S and has the range of adjustability to go another 10mm lower still. Its coil spring and anti-roll bar rates are up about 10% each, and its new dampers have 20 clicks of manual adjustment for compression and rebound. Michelin Cup tyres come as standard, which Alpine says are worth about a second lap all on their own. The car has 5% less drag than an A110 S, but it makes 30 kilograms more downforce, and that's down to the new swan neck rear wing, a new rear diffuser, and some aerodynamic tweaks to the underbody that clean up the airflow. Outwardly, the carbon bonnet is new, as are the carbon sill extensions and engine cover. Right folks, here we are, Alpine A110 R on the road. I've just been on the circuit at Yarama with it, but I thought we'd come out here for a little tootle where it's a bit calmer and less frenetic, and we can have a bit more of a proper discussion about everything this car is and isn't. So, you can see the interior. Can't see a lot behind me because there isn't a lot to see. What they've done is taken away the glass partition between here and the engine bay, and they've replaced the engine cover, which had its own obviously glass rear screen in it, with a carbon fibre alternative, so you can see nothing through there, which can be a bit of a problem at offset junctions and things. But I guess they've also taken away the rear view mirror as well, because why on earth have that? That would be a complete waste of time. And you know, they've saved the weight. They've gone, do you know what, lots of cars like this with their massive wings and their enlarged superchargers or whatever, basically you can't see anything out the back anyway. Your rear view mirror is entirely vestigial, so you might as well take it away, might as well not have it at all. I'm sort of down with that. I also like what they've done with the belts. You know, they've actually made a 6-point harness which is easier to put on because they've sort of combined the belts on either side, so it's a 6-point harness that feels a lot more like a 3-point harness. It's a bit less faffy, but because it's properly connected to the electronics and all that, they don't need a separate 3-point belt to pass the homologation. So again, that's just intelligent design. That's just more weight they've managed to take out of the car. The question is 34 kilograms enough of a weight saving for this car for your £90,000? Remember, that's another 50% more than an A110 S costs. They could have done a bit more, couldn't they? They could have got rid of the infotainment, they could have got rid of the HVAC. What would that have been worth? I don't know, another 10 kilos. This is already a light car. It was a light car before they started chucking stuff away. So it's hard to sort of imagine they could have made massive extra savings. I think I would have liked them to do more with the powertrain. I think they could have shortened the gear setup at least. They said they didn't want to just turn up the boost, create more power, because it would come with more CO2, and that the appeal of this car, particularly in the French market, which is where it sells the most, is because it's efficient. It's got that low CO2 output, which makes it viable for people. It means, you know, a lot of customers, they pay a fraction of the malus CO2 tax that, you know, adds something like 40,000 euros to the price of a Porsche Cayman. It only adds 3,000 euros to the price of one of these. And they, you know, job one was not to boost the CO2 a single gram if they could avoid it. So That's clearly guided their hand on what they've done and what they haven't done. But for me, £90,000 is a lot of money for a 4-cylinder, 2-seater sports car that's only got 295 horsepower. That's kind of mid-level hot hatchback power output these days, isn't it? It's a very special performance car, obviously, very special sports car, and we should be lucky we've got it with the market as it is. But I think some people, maybe not Alpine customers, some people will feel they could have expected a bit more on that front. But otherwise, I tell you what, this is a very, very usable, comfortable sports car. Apart from the rear view problem we've already covered, these new single shell carbon seats are nicely padded. They're a good size. I'm not a small bloke. I can sit in them just fine. They're comfy as you like. I can sit here for hours. There aren't really any other major compromises in the cabin apart from the belts, which we've already covered. These loops on the doors, they look like, you know, a bit of an affectation, but by the time you've got the harness done up, you need that to be able to reach the door to close it. So it's an important inclusion. Otherwise, you know what, it's not too noisy, it's not too raw. I was expecting perhaps a bit more of a Lotus Exige-like driving experience, you know, heavier controls, much bigger noise level, slightly more sort of fiery temperament. But on the track, this thing was surprisingly easy to drive. I mean, different from a regular A110. It's less playful, more sort of weapons grade serious, you know, a lot more stable at high speeds and under braking. It carries enormous speed on the cup tyres, and with this coilover suspension, the cars on the track were literally slammed right down to the track setting on ride height, so another 10 mil below the regular ride height setting for the R, which is 10 mil itself below an S. And these new coilovers they've put on the car, you've got adjustable damping settings, you've got helper springs on them, and it's the first time they've used a sort of a helper spring on any A110. They haven't gone mad with the spring rates. They're only 10% stiffer front and rear, and the anti-roll bars, I think, are 10% stiffer up front, 20% at the back. Clearly they wanted it to feel more serious. They wanted it to feel like a car you could take on a track day and just take no prisoners. And that would be new for this car, wouldn't it? You know, even the A110 S still had a bit of a playful side. It was supposed to be competent on circuit rather than feeling like it was designed to be there, whereas this is very much a track car that works on the road. So yeah, you could take this car to circuits and track days and be probably one of the fastest cars there. It's a very serious piece of kit. And listen, I guess if you've had other A110s before, you've probably enjoyed all of that lovely, delicate handling, adjustability, all of the stuff that we raved about when the car was new, how easy it was to enjoy, how accessible all of that handling appeal was, how well it worked on the road at sort of fairly low speeds, how you didn't have to drive it hard to really get the best out of it. This is a different kind of A110. You can drive this hard and still really get loads out of it. You can't, you know, it's hard to overdrive it, whereas an A110, a regular A110 can, you know, you can feel like you're trying to drive that car too fast on the circuit and can begin to feel like it's falling over itself and rolling into massive skids and just generally not coping very well with life at the sort of pace that you want it to go. I think this car would just eat it all up. It would go as fast as you were prepared to drive it on a track. That's the car that's been missing from the A110 range, hasn't it? So you can say there is a place for this car, but is it the one I would want? It kind of appeals to me because it's inherently more adjustable. It is a car that you could make into the A110 you always wanted to have because of the adjustability in that suspension. You know, put a different tyre in it if you like. This car could be the A110, whatever A110 you wanted it to be. If I was going to spend 90 grand on an A110, that would be the reason I'd do it. But I certainly wouldn't be put off by the idea of using this car like any A110 on the road, you know, regularly, if not daily, just getting every little bit of enjoyment out of it that was going, because you could use this car. It's every bit as usable, possibly except for the rear view mirror factor, as any A110. I think my money would still go on an entry-level car. I like this car at its simplest, at its most delicate and adjustable. I like that beautifully light grip level and all of that trademark A110 playfulness. And to be honest, I want a bit more of that from this car, but I can see that maybe the buyer for this car has had all that, has ticked the box, and he wants something a bit serious. So this is the car for him, and I'm sure he'll absolutely love it. Thanks for watching and liking and subscribing. We'll see you next time.